A great discussion to have here on TYT Sports, and this stemmed from a conversation I was having in a bar not long ago when I was arguing the case that Zinedine Zidane was the best number 5 I have ever seen play. And the fellow who was arguing back, who lost the argument, was kind of categorising the number 5 in terms of defenders and all the goodness that goes along with being that strong number 5 at the back. And I was stating, yeah, but Zidane, for me, is the reason why I remember the number 5. If I see a number 5 on a midfielder, I'm like, Zinedine Zidane, this guy's a player, you need to look out for him. And that's not taking anything away from the brilliant number 5s that have led the back line. But it posed the question in that argument and then had me thinking, who are the best players to have ever worn the number? And this is setting aside the fact that numerous players change numbers. We have so many players. We have Ronaldo, Cristiano wearing number 9, whilst Raul had that number 7 locked up in Madrid before he changed back over, but he's known as CR7. Number 7 is his number. So taking away the fact that many players have moved between numbers, I thought to myself, I'm going to break down into 2 parts. So I'm going to go through 1 through 5 in this video, and then we're going to go from 6 through 11 on the next video, talking about who's the best players to have ever worn that number. And as always, I will be as honest as possible with you guys. Recency bias plays a lot because I didn't get to see the Maradonas week in, week out, or the Pelés. They will be worth a mention in my list because they are the reason why these numbers are so iconic. But I'm going to focus on the recent times that I have witnessed football and which players did so much for that number and made that number kind of their own in their own right. So a lot of consideration. Look at this table. It's just packed with so much research. I was like Ross from Friends when he had to make the list of the people he could sleep with if they were celebrities, except I'm not going to sleep with any of these guys. I mean, they're all a bit old by now. But either way, I thought I would get into the discussion, and I really took a lot of consideration into it. So, number 1, you more often than not is the goalkeepers. And in my time of watching world football, plenty of candidates in there, most of them German, because my God, they create some fantastic goalkeepers. Oliver Kahn, undoubtedly one of the best of all time, German international, FC Bayern goalkeeper, fantastic career, one of the most feared goalkeepers, I think, of all time. Manuel Neuer in recent terms. I'm going to wait until his career comes to an end before I place him at the very top of the list, which I think he's well on his way to doing so. Peter Schmeichel at Manchester United, a fantastic goalkeeper, and many, many more. Casillas in recent times. But I have to choose one. And I know Jason will be smiling wherever he is. I think he's on a plane in New Jersey. Gigi Buffon. And the reason why: consistency, loyalty to his club, the fact that he has won a World Cup and was a huge part in why they did for Italy. Never really added the accolade as of yet for the Champions League, and I think that's very unfortunate for a guy who's been dominant for nearly 2 decades in world football. So he narrowly edges out those other goalkeepers for that reason, and that reason behold. I mean, the guy wants to play until his late 40s, and the way he performs as of recent times, Champions League final for Juventus, and he's supposedly his latter years, still the cat in goals, still values every single moment on that part more than anything else, writes a poem about how he turned his back on the goal, and it was all for good reason. So GG comes in at the best number 1 for me. Number 2, wow. You never really realize how many players wore the number that you're looking at until you do some research. You're like, oh, he wore that number? Oh, he was number 2? And I never thought Gary Neville would make his way into my list of anything, but Gary Neville was a phenomenal right back. And one of the main reasons why English right backs at one point were valued very highly. They were very dominant defensively and they could support when they attacked. But by no means is he going to be my number 1 choice. There's many other candidates that come into this list. I'm even looking back further when I go back to the history of the Carlos Alberto Torres of the world and his time at Brazil. But that's going back. That's just me looking at highlights. I, again, focus on the recency. And there's only one for me. The guy who did for the right-back position, as Claudio Macalelli did for the defensive midfield position, as Lionel Messi has done for world football as a whole, and that is Cafu. He is just a player that will always be in the greatest 11. When you talk about anyone who's played the game, anyone who has analysed the game from years to come, Cafu's bound to be in 9 out of 10 all-time 11s at that right-back role. The number 2 for Brazil and AC Milan. He played until he was around in his late 30s, and he was still bombing down the wing like he was 19. At the age of 38, you still see him supporting the attack, and he was so important for that fullback role, the way he supported the attack, the way he obviously put his defensive duties first. A captain in his prime, a captain for Brazil. Overall, the guy was one of the main reasons why the fullback is considered one of the most important positions on the on the park, and that's not even including his accolades. So listen really quick to his accolades. So he twice won Serie A, Cup Winners' Cup medal, Champions League Winners' medal. Most accolades, though, for him come at the international level. Most capped Brazilian of all time with 143, Confederations Cup, 2 Copa Americas, 2 World Cups. And in 1994 was named the South American Footballer of the Year. And you have to take into consideration this guy deserved more accolades, but he was just unfortunate. More individual accolades, but he was unfortunate to be, one, a defender who are never given the credit they deserve, and 2, he happened to play alongside some of the best ever footballers we've ever seen. So he comes in at my number 2, and I went to number 3, and I automatically was like, Roberto Carlos. You got to put another Brazilian on that side, and Carlos, if not more so than Cafu, was the reason why an attacking fullback was so highly valued at one point in European football for what he did for Real Madrid, and of course part of those World Cup winning teams at Brazil. But then I was thinking, it might not just be left backs that won number 3. Maybe players that played in the centre of the park. Maybe players that played in attacking fullback positions, or maybe a wing back. And I was thinking, Paolo Maldini. I know it seemed to be got Italian, Brazilian, but you have to remember how dominant those 2 international sides were for the majority of my childhood in watching world football. Paolo Maldini is undoubtedly one of the most well-dressed, in terms of accolades, footballers we will ever see. The guy, in his entire 25-year career, is the highest appearance maker for club, Serie A and Italy, I believe, to this moment. He is... I don't know how to describe what he stood for. He could play in the middle of the park. In his latter years, he did a great job of filling in at centre-back on the left side of it. He was more of the traditional Italian defender who was impossible to beat one-on-one, and just a leader for AC Milan. And again, his achievements go along that list of never-ending achievements, internationally and, of course, in club level. He never got that World Cup, which is really unfortunate for him because he deserved to be part of that team, but that was just a little after his time. But when you think about his achievements at club level in the dominant years of AC Milan, he won 7 Serie A titles, Italian Cup, an unbelievable 5 Champions Leagues. Crazy for him, and he appeared in 8 finals of the Europe's premier competition. He came runner-up in 1994 in the World Cup and Euro 2000, but unfortunately missed out on the 2006 World Cup. But a record 126 caps for Italy. The guy deserves to be on everyone's list. But we'll move forward a little quicker because this clip could go on forever. But as I mentioned, we'll break it up into 2 parts. So don't forget to tune in for part 2. Number 4 was very, very difficult because traditionally centre-backs wore number 4. But in my time, as I mentioned, this is biased towards my personal view on what these players did for the number and what they did for me watching football. And when I look at a number 4, I'm thinking Sergio Ramos in recent terms has to be considered as a phenomenal defender. The guy has won both World Cup and Champions League, but accolades aside, composed at the back, athletic. Overall, he's been at the top flight of European defenders for the last 6-7 years, and I think he deserves to be put in that list. And alongside him, the guy with a bigger engine than a Ferrari bombing down the street, Zanetti just oozed stamina. The guy could just run for a day straight and then come back, do a 20-minute workout and go back on the park and play at his full potential. He never seemed to get tired. He won number 4 at his prime in Inter Milan. But there's one guy for me wearing number 4, individually, not just accolades, because he didn't obtain the craziest of accolades, no Champions League to his name, but Patrick Vieira, first Frenchman on my list. Number 4, box-to-box midfielder, more on the defensive side, leader, gangly, athletic, talented, touch and footwork of a ballerina, but height of an NBA player. The guy was frighteningly good. Frighteningly good. I used to despise him because I was a Man United fanboy. Still am. And my Roy Keane views towards him were kind of swayed because those two had that feud. But can't take away from what the guy meant for football. He encompassed what an athletic midfielder is. He encompassed everything that you see in the Paul Pogbas of today's world. He encompassed everything that kind of went along with a box-to-box midfielder that is so necessary in world football, no matter what level. Part of the 1998 France World Cup winning team, and in the Euro winning team, part of the glory days of Arsenal. I know Arsenal fans have to jog their memory a little far back. The Invincibles, he was as invincible could get. And for that reason and that reason alone, he reminds me of what number 4 stands for. You can be, yeah, centre-back, but you can also be that engine in the middle of the park and that talent. So he is my number 4. And then concluding our list, I gave it away at the start, so I kind of should have said spoiler alert, before that. My bad. Number 5, Zinedine Zidane. Now, number 5's Cannavaro, centre-back. I talk about Cannavaro all the time. Is one of the best centre-backs I've ever seen. Small, sturdy, composed, but could read the game like he was just reading a newspaper. Arguably the main reason, alongside Zinedine Zidane going into self-destruct mode, that Italy won the World Cup in 2006. But I think that when you look at those two in comparison, Zinedine Zidane was number 10 when he was at his glory time at France. He's not going to make my number 10 list. So I just could not have a list of best ever footballers in the world, in the game, without having Zinedine Zidane in there. Because similar to what I mentioned with Vieira, combine a ridiculous amount of flair, a ridiculous amount of technique, a ridiculous amount of just smooth, fluent movement, and that's what you get. You get Zinedine Zidane with all that athleticism, all that talent, but you get just something extra, something that you couldn't really put into words, something that you couldn't really touch on when you're watching it. You're like, what makes this guy so special? Oh, it's the fact that he's huge. He is so smart, one of the most intelligent footballers in the game, but he still was able to take people one-on-one and ghost by them, despite not looking like he was the quickest. So Zizou, number 5 for Real Madrid, and now for some reason people were dishing away the number 9 shirts, the number 7 shirts, the number 11, and we're buying up number 5s, traditionally for the big, strong centre-backs. Zinedine Zidane made it his own. And that is aside from the fact that the guy's won Champions Leagues, the guy has scored probably the best ever goal in a Champions League final. And I think that combining that with his World Cup accolades and what he did for France and what he did for football, he is my number 5. And I don't think anyone will move him from that spot at this moment in time. And that rounds up part 1. Do not go anywhere as we'll be going through, oh my God, even the thought of rhyming off number 10s is kind of making me ill. But come back to TIT Sports. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Follow me on Twitter, Francis_Maxwell. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Keep in mind, this is a very subjective point of view. And I will come back again with my second part.